My name is Pankaj Chugh. I lead the Google Cloud Business Unit for LTI Mindtree. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, very close to many of our hearts. Many of us have, in the recent past, set up enterprise data warehouses, enterprise data platforms. A lot of empirical research has been done in the past few years on how important data strategy is to your business strategy and how it actually creates true differentiation in the markets. Um, and many of you and many of our clients have actually set up these enterprise data warehouse platforms. And, and they spent a lot of energy doing that. Today, what we want to do is we want to actually expand the aperture of your strategy in two different ways. And we talked through that a little bit. And we will actually, with me, I have Putcha. Jit is actually, he leads the data and analytics practice for LTI Mindtree. Uh, and we also have Anish. Anish actually is the CIO and CDO for Genius Bank. And he has a very, very interesting story to tell us, which actually kind of will cement the thoughts we're going to talk about. So these are the three of us. My picture is 5 years old, so I think you should be able to figure that out. Or actually, maybe 10 years old. So that's us. So so now let's talk about and we'll talk about the two ways to expand the purchase. So let's just start over the first thing. So this is, as you can see in the picture, this is actually Mount Everest. So there was a research done by the British Medical Journal about 6 years back. Of all the fatalities that happened from 1921 to 2006 on Mount Everest, 192 people died on Mount Everest between 1921 and 2006. What was most interesting was that 56% of those people died after they had ascended the peak of the Mount Everest, which is 29,000 feet. They got to the 29,000 feet, they celebrated, and I think they kind of forgot that they had to get down, or they actually didn't plan for getting down. If you know a little bit about Mount Everest or any of the 8,000 feet mountains, the death zone starts at 26,000 feet. So as people were starting to get down, 56% of the people actually who died actually died when they were getting down. So it's really, really important to realize that once you set up your enterprise data warehouse, there's a lot of stuff to be done. So you need to celebrate, of course, but you have to think of the life after. Very, very important. So that's the first aperture we're going to actually talk about. So think ahead. Once you do that, once you set up your enterprise data warehouse platform, think ahead. Think of the life after. So that's your first aperture of expansion of the aperture of thinking when you think of enterprise data warehouse strategy. So that's number one. Now I'll talk about the second thing. As you guys see, this beautiful animal is a dragonfly. Um, there was there's a lot of research being done on the hunting success rate of animals. So if anybody wants to take a guess, how much is the hunting success rate of a tiger? I'll give the answer. It's actually 15%. How much is the hunting success rate of a lion or a pack of lions? Lions or lionesses hunt in packs. It's 25%. Peregrine falcon, which actually is a very, very bright and one of the fastest birds in the world. They actually dive down. And then they go for the kill, and they actually shoot back up again. Their hunting success rate is 47%. You look at all the animals in the animal kingdom, the hunting success rate will range from 15% to the top of the pack is the wild dogs. It's 67%. There's one animal which actually stands out, and that is dragonfly. The hunting success rate of a dragonfly is 95%. Now, why am I telling this to you? I'll tell it to you in a second, but it's just very, very intriguing. So actually, Howard University actually did some research on dragonflies, and they try to figure out, what's going on, how are they so successful. So what really happens is that a dragonfly has a compound eye. It has 30,000 facets of where the information comes into the brain, and it covers almost 360 degrees of the environment around it. The information comes into the brain, it gets processed, and it has four wings, and those wings work very independent of each other. So what's really happening is the animal is wired to be able to take information, and that information actually is 360-degree information from a whole variety of different sources. It gets processed, and the wings work independently, and therefore the dragonfly can actually hover up, down, left, right, and it can just stay around. So what's really happening is your information is actually in many ways getting captured from a variety of different sources, processed, and executed on in a very, very differentiated way. Now, the reason this is important is when we think of our data strategy, we think of setting up the enterprise data warehouse platform. What we forget is the act of thinking beyond, which is actually think the entire journey end to end. Think beyond what information are you going to get, how are you going to process that information, and how will you execute to that information. So that's the second point I wanted to make. So when you are thinking of your enterprise data warehouse strategy, there are two things you need to think about. Think ahead. What's the life after? Once you set up your enterprise data warehouse, how are you going to actually manage your enterprise data warehouse after you set it up? And you have to think before you get to your Mount Everest and celebrate. Yeah, you should have thought about it. Do you have enough oxygen? Have you thought through that? How are you going to get down? Are you actually going to get down on time? How will you actually work in a team, or whatever else you need to think about? But think ahead. And the second thing is think holistically. Think every aspect of your enterprise data warehouse, including what information are you going to seek, how are you going to process that information, and how are you going to execute to that information. Now, to actually cement this, I'm going to actually invite Jit. Jit is actually going to talk about how you execute to these two expansions of Aperture. And then after that, I'll invite Anish, who will actually talk through a specific, very, very interesting story, which he will talk about how he actually executed to that. So, Jit, over to you.
I hope I'm audible. Okay. Uh, Thank you so much for taking time in the morning. I know yesterday you all had a very interesting keynote. And the reason you must be wondering, some of you, about starting with Everest to Dragonfly, what's going on here. I think the idea is about, we talk about in the data world, narratives and storytelling, and bringing into the attention of people why you need to do a right investment. I hope you have done reasonably good job in terms of getting your attention about why this session is started with some kind of a story. I go with my name Jit, and been in the industry for last 26 years, doing data analytics and AI for many clients over the years. And I can't tell you this is the best time for people who are in the data professionals, who are investing in data and trying to drive for the first time. Everyone is talking about how do I really get best out of my data and how do I drive more monetization. And I'm sure every year there is a new buzzword. One year it's a data is the new oil, another year data monetization, data marketplace, data products. I think you name it, we have gone through all of that. I think this year probably the new story is going to be GenAI, and I'm sure each of you has seen very interesting demos yesterday, and some of us got a chance preview of that much ahead of time. We were able to bring that in our solutions and started driving to the clients. So what I'm just taking the cue from what Pankaj started about, all of us know in the industry, data investments been happening over the years. And there's nothing new what we are talking about, but what is new and what is old is I'm going to quickly touch upon today. So if it, oops, sorry. Yeah, got it. So if you think about, there are few things which all of us know over the years, and I think it's always important to talk about those basics. I think from my good friend, always talk about three things important in life, which is about having a good sleep, good food, good exercise. All of us know, but many of us don't do all the three regularly. The same way, some of these points, all of you know. It's not about you don't know or we don't understand, but over the years, there is not enough time spent on these areas by each of us and our investments. So let me touch upon each of them in a very clear manner. The first one is about user adoption. If you heard about any horror stories about data implementations, I think one of the big reason is this, the user adoption. People are used to use a particular technology. People who are getting information from a particular area. Suddenly we go and talk to them about we are migrating to cloud. And once it is done, everything is taken care. And they don't have enough comfort once they go to the new area. Whether it is because of lack of understanding, lack of awareness, or whatever is the reason. So one of the most important is the user adoption and evolution. As the users start using, I'm sure you all agree with me, they become more hungry about the data. They would like to get information much faster. So part of whenever we think about new implementation, new modernization, it is very important for us to put enough effort on that. Number two, just getting it on attention, getting FinOps right. And I'm sure those of you heard about since implementation of cloud, our costs are gone up. Any of you faced that? And I'm sure quite a few of the customers went through that kind of a journey. The reason for that is maybe it is not well understood, well thought through, not an architecture is done for the right reason. Maybe simply a lift and shift kind of a thing is done. And also, there is some kind of a misnomer, myth. People think about going to cloud is going to give infinite scale. So people can play whatever they want, people can explore whatever they want, and may not require all of that. So it's very important part of this data modernization. We need to set the FinOps right. So otherwise, people tend to give cloud implementation is not successful. It's nothing to do with a cloud. It's to do with the way the setup and architecture principles has to be right. So that's the second, wanted to bring it to your attention. I'm going to cover a little more deeper, not leaving at that headline, but I just thought that's an important aspect. The third one is about the data quality and observability. Whatever name you talk about, the data is getting flooded in each of our organizations. And I'm sure you all seen the same updates about how many zettabytes, petabytes that's happening even in our own organization day to day. So it's important to have, as we invest on these areas, how we are able to leverage the end-to-end automation of that information. If I have to give those of you who watch keynote yesterday, if your entire operations, you're able to get an audit, you're able to get end-to-end view, you're able to get solving those problems in real time, how good it is. And that's an area you have to think through. And each of us wanted our investments to get zero ops, no ops, or very less investments on the operations and support. So that's where data quality and data ops is going to be very, very critical. And the only way we are going to get users comfort is about quality of the data. And then finally, these days, more important is about security and privacy. All of us seen n number of incidents and the regulations and others. So in a simple way, I will talk about the usability, and then the performance, which include the cost, and then the quality, and then finally the privacy. These are the four big things all of us have to really think through enough while going through this journey. And again, as I started with, it's not about we don't know, but often they were underestimated when we start our journey. And most often, when you go back and root cause analysis of a programs which were in difficult situations by any organization, you may end up finding one of them. Or you may find the implementations are done well, but over the course of time, your return on investment is not really what you planned for. And again, it boils down to one of these things. Why are we talking about all these things? So if you think about user adoption, um, those of you have, any of you, I'm assuming all of you would have completed some form of data modernization, data migration, or setting up your data to drive. Why do we do that? Why are we investing so much on going to cloud? Why is there so crazy about everyone? I think bottom line is, in my view, two parts. One is about data democratization. Going to cloud will help you if you are a large conglomerate, you are an MNC, or you are a company which is part of the largest supply chain. You can exchange information, you can share information. So data monetization is one big thing. And then naturally, the next big thing is going to be, how do you really make sure you are able to give the information right time, right place, at right level of right level to the people. So when we go to modernization, one of the things which we found quite a few times is about, you have the users who are using the reports, and there are quite a few people who are doing downstream systems where you are sharing information, and there are set of people who are your data scientists and MLOps engineers and others. So you have a different types of personas in your business. And oftentimes we realize your modernization, you are not taking care all of them in terms of what you need to do. So it is important for us to look at what are the different personas and how each of them are going to consume that information. And it's not done properly. We found many times organizations are going through, suddenly they realize we have some downstream systems, they're still looking for FTP, and it may sound very weird when people are talking about cloud journey, but unfortunately, world still has a lot of such systems. Now, you cannot postpone your production go live out of the blue saying about your downstream systems are waiting for it. So just to get your attention, it is important to have the right personas. It is important to have understanding of each of them. I'm sure all of you would have seen the nudging the users and making sure users are used to a particular screen or particular technology for last 10, 15, whatever years. They've been using their reports for 10 years, 15 years. Suddenly we go and talk to them about start using Looker, start using something else. It's going to create beautiful features. While it may be great for us as a technologists or as a business people who are implementing the programs, the end user many times feels it's not as easy as it is for them. Either two reasons. One, probably they're not been involved in the beginning, or second, they don't have enough comfort with usage of it. So the folks, one of the things which I wanted to bring is about, we need to plan for that, and we need to nudge, and we need to ensure some champions about it. The next one I wanted to bring it to your attention is about the FinOps. I think if there is one area which we have seen significant amount of interest in last 1 year, and this is one. While the user personas and others are always there, but FinOps is the phenomena. As more workloads are going to cloud, the investments are doubling, tripling for the organization. And what does that mean? And I'm sure some of you would have read IDC and bunch of other analysts talking about 40% of cloud investments, the organizations are going through difficult simply because a huge amount of burn is happening than what they planned. And when you planned your return on investment, that's not what is being done. So it is important to have your FinOps ahead of time and have a clear structured mechanism while you give comfort to your end users, comfort to your line of business, how they can use the information. But it is very important you have a monitoring of that. And I think we need to help. And those of you tried and tested, suddenly a big bill is coming with your credit card using one of the cloud. I'm sure all of you gone through or all of you seen in your estate. And I think that's where I again insist each of you to think about FinOps is the area where your implementation can be not just successful, but it will sustain for much longer term. The next thing I wanted to bring it attention is about the data quality and data governance piece of it. I think often we have seen over the years, the data quality, if there is one thing where you get a trust with your end users, is about data quality. And these days, we are no longer using data warehouse just as a warehouse. Whenever we have a time, we will look at it. Today, we are using data warehouses, data lakes as a mission critical. Some of the organizations looking that for their financial statements, some of the organizations looking for real regulatory, some of them looking real-time supply chain efficiencies, some of them looking at real-time credit card fraud kind of a thing. So these data estates are mission critical. So in a mission critical environment, you cannot have a situation where your data quality it's not a complete, it's not accurate. So that's where I think enough importance has to be given, not when you're doing modernization, but once you complete modernization, you may go through, your organization may go through mergers and acquisition, your organization may go through new implementation, your organization may go through a set of new regulatory requirements. So it is very important to have enough focus right up front. And I'm sure all of us know there are enough methodologies exist, there are enough technologies and toolkits available even within the GCP ecosystem. So I think a lot of investment had to be done there. And again, folks, this is very, very underestimated during the implementation by every organization. And whether suddenly we keep hearing about model drift, data drift, and there are some challenges in our system. Our CXO is still very unhappy with what is happening, and we are still trying to find out a single view of our customer. We are still trying to find single view of our product. All those challenges during modernization, if you're not taken enough importance, you may end up with that. So that's where it is important to have data quality and data governance an area. And I'm very happy to say today, luckily, a lots of AI and Gen AI is really helping us. What I mean by that is, we used to, many years back, those of you started more than 10 years back, 15 years back, 20 years back, we had to literally manually capture the metadata, manually capture data cataloging. And today, we can use Gen AI to scan to your code, scan your databases, and actually help you to drive your metadata and data quality and data catalog much better way. And that's an area, when we talk about data quality, we should use the new tools and techniques to solve the old problem. Data quality problem always existed, but now we have new ways to solve that much faster. And I think that should be part of your ecosystem. And then finally, everyone wants now a data marketplace. And I'm sure all of you would have heard about how we can actually make more money by monetizing our information. Now, if you think about this is where it's very important for a data security and privacy. Every organization wants to make money from their data. And I'm sure each of you would have heard from your CXO saying our competitor is making much more meaningful out of the data. They're using the data to build new products. They're using the data to improve their operation. They're using the data to actually drive more revenue. I'm sure all of you would have heard about. And these days, all of you would have heard about data marketplace, where you actually can share your information in a marketplace and get some users consume it and get the data out of it. The same way, you may be consuming somebody else in the marketplace the information. So how that will connect the dots for you. So again, which has been very, very fascinating for everyone to make money from this, but very little understood by most of the organizations. How do you begin this journey? Am I going to share information which is going to be competitive? Then am I going to lose my competitive advantage? Do I keep all the data in the marketplaces? How do I get the security and privacy of the information in this whole journey? I think we keep hearing about, if your organization is a multinational, working in 30 countries, 80 countries, 100 countries, these days it's become very, very easy for every country to come out with their own data privacy and their own policies. And it's going to be very difficult. And each of you in this room may play a vital role in terms of how do you really bring that. So that's why the data privacy and security plays a major role in helping your organizations to not just monetize the data, but make sure you don't get into any regulatory hassles. You don't get into that. So in short, folks, what I could impress you is about the 4 pillars which we talked about. The usability, make sure your new investments are usable. Otherwise, you just dump something from somewhere to somewhere. It's not going to bring. Number 2, make sure your cloud investments on FinOps are super planned ahead of time. Number 3, data quality is the only way with which your investments are going to be sustained. And then finally, it is important to have your privacy and security in place with the amount of challenges world is seeing now. And also Gen AI is creating lots of opportunities for all of us in our business. But at the same time, there is a lot of guardrails are required. And that's why it is important to plan ahead of time and do this so that your entire investments on cloud will actually exponentially give your return on investment. So that's some of the things which I thought give a perspective to you. And then final point, all of you would have heard about decision support. Would you mind raising your hand? Decision support. Okay. Now from decision support, now we are talking about decisions augmentation. And then finally, we are talking about decisions automation. We want to reach a stage where with AI and Gen AI, your data estate can start becoming a decisions automation where your company will start driving a business transformation truly, not just a lip service of business transformation. That's what I thought. I'll give some perspectives. Very happy to hear some questions later part of time, but I'll pass the mic to Anish. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Chit, for setting the stage. So now let me add to the story with Genius, how at Genius we are looking at data-driven decisions. Before getting there, let me give an introduction. I am Anish Jacob. I lead technology at Genius Bank, and I will also give an introduction what is Genius Bank. Before that, I have to talk about SMBC, which is our parent. So SMBC is one of the largest banks in the world, 12th largest bank by asset, operates over 40 plus countries. In the US, it's been operating for more than 100 years, primarily on the commercial business. Genius Bank is the retail division of SMBC in the US. We started building this 2 years back. We launched our first product, unsecured loan, 2 months back. Next product is ready to go, which is savings. And we have like full spectrum of full banking product for next 10 years. So it's sometimes very rare opportunity to build something from the scratch. When we got an opportunity to build something from the scratch, we want to do it little differently. We want to make better product, better experience, better rate, better data insight that users can use and make some actionable actions based on insights they receive. So when we look at these goals, data is a critical part to that, because without proper data and enablement of that decisioning, it's very difficult for any of us within the organization to achieve this goal or our customers. So with that in mind, we looked at how we need to organize this, going back to thinking beyond and thinking ahead. We don't want to be siloed or short sighted with our needs now, rather than how do we put something that can scale as we scale our organization, grow our product suites as well as customer base. So these are some of the examples. On the left side, you could see that these are the different types of decision or use cases our users, internal users, are trying to make. From a few examples, which segment of the customer is going to give the highest lifetime value? Which segment we should target? Which campaign is working well? If coming to fraud, what is the potential chance for something to be default, some customer to be default? What is a customer risk profile? There are additional fraud cases where we want to understand the fraud patterns. We also want to minimize false positives. So these are the set of decisions we could make with data. But then if you look, how are we going to make those decisions? There are three ways, at least, in my opinion. Human intelligence. You could get access to data, you could look at the data, analyze it, make your decisions through reports, etc. The other way of making decision is actually you have that predefined algorithms. You implement that, and that algorithms could make decisions on behalf of humans. Third is most interesting, and you might have heard that last yesterday and today, a lot of AI, right? AI, Gen AI. But there are multiple variations of that. So there is like predictive analytics, which is widely used for decision making. And now there is Gen AI, which is kind of like adding a different flavor, which is making more human machine collaboration. So you have, these are different ways we want to make decisions. So when we want to make these decisions, how we design this one? How do we enable this? That's the next question. So this is how we are looking at genius. If you think beyond, maybe when you start, it is easy for one organization to do all the data insights for entire organization, but it's not scalable. So Jit kind of mentioned marketplace. This is kind of a marketplace concept. So you want to democratize data. What that means, you centralize your data in one place, both external and internal, but then you decentralize the consumption of the data. But it needs to be governed well. You need to have guard rules. You need to ensure data quality. Just kind of like outline the importance of data quality. You want to ensure proper access control for that data. You also want to enable flexible analytics, because when you democratize data based on the authorization or the need, the user should be able to get the data into a local environment or their own work area, means not the machines, like in an infrastructure where they could actually analyze the data, they could actually model the data and use data to make right decisions. So now, with all this in mind, this is what we have done at Genius. We decided to build an ecosystem that supports data centralization and also that can support decentralized consumption. We haven't built all of these yet. We are in the path of building some. The centralization is almost done. Decentralization is actually being built as we speak. So if we look at some examples, I talked about loans. We have multiple sources where we get the data: our core banking, underwriting, application processing components. We get data at customer level. We get data at account level. We also get data at transaction level. We want all this data coming to a landing zone, one place. Then sequence of processes like security, encryption, cleaning, aggregation, transformation, and then the storage. We store it to two different formats. Like one is raw file format at our data lake, and the other one is actually more tabular format using BigQuery in our data warehouse. That is more accessible and also more domain driven. We are using pretty much Google ecosystem in this process, because when we looked at different options, we found this ecosystem probably meet our needs and we can scale, and we could consider other tools if we need, if we see a need in the future. But right now we kind of like pretty much went with full of Google set of tool set. Um, One exception probably data governance. We are using Colibra because that's kind of our standard across the board. but it's well integrated with the ecosystem. But the idea is actually like once you have central data through proper governance, quality, you enable this through to different type of users. Like it could be a leased environment. It could be their own, for example, credit team could have their own environment where they could actually like get the data, analyze the data, build their credit rules, experiment, and then push into production. They could visualize data. We have Looker. So Looker will enable you to visualize the data. We do have a Vertex AI platform that eventually can be used to enhance your modeling. So we thought like this type of an environment is easily scalable and also can support. Today we have loans, tomorrow we have savings, and we are going to have credit card, different products. When we add over the years, this model should be able to scale and support our needs. We probably will make adjustment as we learn, but the idea is actually how do we put together a vision where we can march towards. So one challenge we experienced was like, it's a different problem. It's a good problem to have. Many organizations are looking for transformation. For us, a different problem, we need to build it from scratch. But when you build it from scratch, the challenge is you're building the organization as well. Then you don't, you're gaining the skill set. Who knows the data and also who can build the platform, right? This is where like we used a lot of partnership and professional services to accelerate those development. That really helped. So we blend our internal team with industry expertise and kind of like build one cohesive team that can actually help us with the build out of some of these building blocks, which kind of like pave the road for the future. With that, I will conclude my session. And I think it's been an amazing journey at Genius. Just want to make a point that we are hiring, we are looking for a lot of expertise in Google because we are committed to invest in Google. So I'll call Pankaj for closing thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Anish. Thanks, Jed. So I think there's generally a lot to absorb in a session like this, and I think let me just simplify and just bring those analogies back in again. So there are two things. If you need to remember from this session, two things: think ahead, think beyond. Think ahead. What Jed talked about. Think about observability. Think about FinOps. Think how you're going to do user adoption. Very, very important. And then Anish brought it to life on how you could actually bring this all together to create the business impact you need to create. So you need to actually think about, what's your use case? How are you going to use the data platform you're going to set up, and how will you actually turn that into meaningful action? So those are the two things you need to remember. So if you're actually climbing a Mount Everest, celebrate when you get to the Mount Everest, but also think how you're going to get down, what the next steps are. So that's think ahead. Think beyond. We do a lot of learning from biomimicry. I think about a dragonfly. Think about every aspect of your data to decision journey, not just the central data warehouse or the data platform you're setting up.